gentlemen, welcome to this special meeting on the New Directions 2040.
No.
Huh?
Unified Development Code rewrite.
Code rewrite, okay.
Sorry, sir.
All right, good deal. I need somebody to keep me straight. We got our parish president, Mr. Mike Cooper, here, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the public that are here and those that may be watching this being televised. This is an update to you all as the Parish Planning Commission of the St. Tammany Parish Unified Development Code that's been in the rewrite process for maybe 4 or 5 years, but it's a much needed initiative. And I want to thank our facilitators, our consultants that are helping to facilitate this process, and that's going to be giving you an update where we stand this evening. Mr. Steve Villavasso, Alex Carter, and John Catalanato with Fairway Engineering are facilitating this process. I also want to thank our staff, our administrative staff with the Department of Planning and Development, Ross Liner, Helen Lambert, Aaron Cook, and Leslie Delatte of the Planning and Development Department. And also here this evening is Gina Campo, Council Administrator. And Council Member Jimmy Davis is here as well. Council Member Davis was also a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission and has been following this since its inception as well. So the purpose, of course, of the rewrite of the Unified Development Code is to, these are the codes that guide development in St. Tammany Parish with regards to development standards and such. And as we've noticed in administration of these requirements in these codes and regulations, there are many discrepancies, contradictions, standards that are perhaps out of date, and it causes confusion, and we simply want to develop codes that make sense, that are non-contradictory, and will allow us standards that allow us to develop in ways that we're not causing flooding, the ways we're not allowing enough buffer areas or green space. So this has been a long, tedious process, but I think once it's completed, we will all benefit from this. Parish government, our citizens, our business owners, and so we're happy to continue the progress that we're making, and I'll leave it up to the consultants and the planning staff and you all to determine when this process might be over. But we've been, I think you're going to find that we've made a lot of headway in the past 2.5 years, and we're hoping to wrap this up with your continued cooperation and input from the public. And again, I appreciate you all being here this evening in advance of your 6 o'clock regular meeting tonight to get the update from our consultants. So I'll turn that over now to Councilman Davis. Okay, Councilman Davis is here. Ross Liner, Director of Planning and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you all.
All right, I'm not going to reiterate a whole lot that President Cooper mentioned, but yeah, we need to get this code rewrite completed. Do really feel like we have a good team on board. Met Steve about 20 years ago as a master's student, himself a professor at UNO in the master's program, also an attorney. So he's been doing this around Louisiana, all over Louisiana for about 40 years now. I'm not a code writer. I'm a land use and transportation planner. That's what I like to do. Code writing is a specialty. And to have Steve on board as the lead is great for St. Tammany Parish. Alex Carter is a sub, and met her 15 years or so ago as she was a planner in Jefferson Parish, became planning director. Became planning director in St. John, worked for Louisiana Watershed Initiative, and now she's out on her own as a consultant. So I feel like we have a really great team with a lot of great experience that know how to write code, know how to read an existing code, and bring us up to where we need to be today for St. Tammany Parish to be the most resilient and just best parish we can make it for development. So with that, I'll turn it over to Steve. I will say hold all your questions till the end, because I don't want to go down a rabbit hole and not get through the presentation. Just mark them down, come back, we'll have plenty of time. So just 1 second. Okay, weird. And it keeps moving, so technical difficulties. Give me 1 second. All right, so do you need it on the computer? Either one of y'all?
I don't. I'm agree.
All right, so Steve, are you doing an intro? You want to go first?
Yeah.
All right, so I'll just show you. I mean, if you need to scroll through, screens are on each side, and it's just the up and down button.
Okay, great.
But give it a second because there's a slight delay.
Sure.
And with that, I'll hand it over to Steve Lavasso. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Ross, and thank you all for coming early tonight. Steve Lavasso. A couple of footnotes. Thank you, Ross, for introducing the team. And I just want to make sure I emphasize that we have a third component on the team, and that's John Catalinato. President Cooper mentioned that, and that's Fairway Engineering. And they're a key component because there are a lot of technical and engineering aspects to a code update, and I think we have the right balance. And John is in St. Tammany Parish. He's very familiar with your current code and your current development environment. So I think we have a great team, and I thank the parish and Ross for letting us do this. We absolutely love doing this. It's what I do every day and every night of my life. We're supposed to be in Covington tonight, but I told Covington, nope, you take the back seat tonight because I'm going to meet the big folks in the parish tonight, okay? But let me do our presentation. We have a few slides. I think it'll orient everyone, and Alex and I will go back and forth, and maybe both of us will be standing up here at one point. But I do want to compliment President Cooper because I got to say, this guy gets it. He really understands this stuff. And he covered the first 5 slides in his introductory presentation, by the way. We're on slide 6 already because he really covered the top points. But I'm going to say a couple of things anyway. And he comes from a planning background anyway. So he speaks our language and he understands the master plan that's on your dais. He understands this code update. We're calling it a code rewrite. It's really a brand new code, okay? We call it different things, but it's a brand new code for St. Tammany Parish. And that's our, this is the real first slide, the primary objective. The primary objective is to give you a new UDC. Planners have a habit of talking in jargon, and UDC is one of our little jargon things. That's Unified Development Code. And the significance of that phrase, Unified Development Code, it's not just a new zoning ordinance, it's not just new development regulations. The concept is to unify all the disparate pieces that a landowner or a parish administrator or a public official needs to understand in order to make the right decisions or to make the right meet the right goals that your master plan is going to lay out for you for the next 20 years. So yes, it includes zoning, it includes subdivision regulations, it includes a sign ordinance, it includes drainage rules. So the Unified Development Code is all those aspects. And when you see it laid out in slide 10 or 11, when Alex shows you the reorganization that we've done, we think it's logical. It's numbered 1 through 9. Duh, why not number things 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and people can understand that. And that's another aspect of what we try to achieve here. And that's really the primary result, a code that is understandable, a code that is fair, a code that treats everyone the same and lays out a roadmap so that everyone knows what the rules are. President Cooper mentioned contradictions and discrepancies. No question, that's in your current code today. And we have, I don't say we've struggled, because we didn't struggle to do this, but it was a labor of love to go through it word by word, page by page, and here's where I get to really tip my hat to the staff, because the staff has been the secret weapon of this entire process. Not just the planning staff, but all staff, all parish departments, we have formed a bond with to make sure that they have ownership in this UDC. It's not a new bagel that's going to pop out of the toaster that no one has ever seen before. It's a collaborative effort, and it's an effort that has gone through every page in the code, and we think it's going to be the right code for you. We want your comments, we want the the council's comments, we want citizens' comments, but this is a great base for us all to move forward and get this code adopted in a reasonable fashion. So I'm going to turn it over to Alex at this point and let her talk about a few of the details, and like I said, we'll come back and forth.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thank you all so much for having us tonight. We're really excited to talk a little bit about where we are with the code. And like Steve and President Cooper mentioned, and even Ross, this was a significant effort has taken place to date with the staff and in editing the code and working with it. I think one of the most important things we want to start with before we talk about the changes is to let you all know that we are building from previous efforts. This isn't something that we just started from scratch. There's been a lot of really productive work in the parish, specifically related to the 2017 code. There was a big effort that was underway, and we did pull from that work. We looked at the way they streamlined the code. We looked at the way they sort of organized some definitions and some processes, and spoke and worked with the staff to figure out, what were the best parts of this, what were the things that didn't work, so we could learn those lessons and not have them be repeated with this code. We also know that at the same time that we're working on the code, there was a toolkit that was in development through the Regional Planning Commission in New Orleans. And so we were acutely aware of that. And for that reason, we worked closely with that team and incorporated a lot of low-impact development standards to address flooding and subsidence and a lot of the challenges that y'all have as appropriate, right? To think about this as a long-term thing. We don't want to sort of go full throttle on day one, but we do want to start to incorporate some low-impact development standards to look at how we manage flood risk in St. Tammany with new development. And then finally, we know y'all are working with your master plan, have adopted it, looking to work within it. And so it's important to know that while we were writing the code, reviewed the master plan, looked at the goals and objectives, and worked into this process ways to start to achieve those goals and objectives in this code version. So you're not having multiple efforts happening at one time, not organized or aligned. This is in fact quite the opposite experience. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this. That's the wrong way. Okay, and so one of the things that I think is really straightforward about this code is that the reorganization, if you're a citizen or a builder or a planner or an insurance agent, I think this code will make sense for you. We've worked really hard with the staff, we worked really hard with the team in Fairway and looked at that 2017 version to do this organization in a way where it starts with the setup, right? Your chapter 100 is your administration. Who is responsible for what? It gets at your boards, your agencies. It recalls back to part 1 of your code, that is your charter and your legal binding, the responsibilities that everyone has. Because whenever you're trying to do something, the first thing you need to know is who do I talk to, right? So that is chapter 1. Chapter 200 is how do I do this? It's your procedures. All your procedures in your current code are pretty spread out. They're in the various sections. It's very difficult to know if the procedure you're reviewing is official or if there's something else that may contradict it somewhere else in the code. And so in this process, we've taken all of those standards and pulled them into a new chapter 200. So this chapter does not exist in your code right now. So it's a new one that pulls everything in one place. If you're trying to figure out, I need to do X, Y, or Z, you kind of know in Chapter 1 who's responsible for your decision-making. In Chapter 2, you sort of get your roadmap on how to move that application through a process. Chapter 300 is we sort of start with the basics, your building, right? You can't get a permit unless you're up meeting the building code. So you start with the basics, get your building code standards correct. Then you have to ask yourself, what can I do with my building, right? And so that's where the zoning is important. That's your Chapter 400. These are your zoning districts, your land uses, accessory uses, all of that's permitted, and your regulations are in 400. If you're continuing to make an application, you may actually have something that already exists, right? So my building has been here forever. I've been operating with this land use forever. What does that mean for me? I'm not starting from scratch, and that's going to be your Chapter 4, that's going to be your Chapter 500. So those are your non-conforming situations. We see these all the time. It can be very complicated to navigate this process. So we like to group all of them together, organize them in a very streamlined way, and refer to them throughout Chapters 200, 300, 400, and 500. Chapter 600 is sort of all the accessories, if you think about it like that, for development. Beyond your building, you have lighting, fencing, parking, noise, all of those things, landscaping, all of that's in Chapter 600. Because I think you all know and have a really good experience with this, is if you can't get the land use right, and if you can't get the building code, you shouldn't really be looking at landscaping. You're ahead of yourself, right? And then Chapter 700 is another layer of regulation that a lot of y'all, I'm sure, are familiar with, that if you're in the coastal zone, you've got to have additional considerations about how you build, where you build, mitigation, and there's a coastal use permitting process that you may or may not have to go through in addition to your permit. And so Chapter 700 says, hold up before you move forward, make sure determine whether you're in this area, and if you need a coastal use permit. If you do, this is the process. And then finally, in Chapter 800 and 900, this is where I think the rubber starts to meet the road, right? You have the right zoning, you have the right land use, you can build your buildings, but you maybe have a large request. This is where the process for subdivisions lives. This is sort of y'all's everyday environment, your minors, your preliminaries, your majors. All the standards for subdivisions have been consolidated and streamlined in Chapter 800. And then Chapter 900 is the infrastructure. It's the piece of the subdivision that fits right underneath. Roads, bridges, bike lanes, utilities, all of that is in Chapter 900. And one thing that we tried to encourage with the code was it kind of gets more and more complicated as you move further into the code. So like your engineers are going to be the ones that end up in Chapter 900, right? But your everyday citizens who may pick it up and think, I want to do this, it's very easy, I think, for them to navigate through 100, 200, 300, kind of move into whatever professional support they may need, depending on how large or complicated the request is. And so what we'll do here is really just go over each of the sort of big pieces of the code and just give you a very high-level summary of the changes. So within the zoning districts, it's really, we started the process of consolidating some of your districts. You all have a lot of districts, which I'm sure you all are very aware of. You have 49 districts, and they're very similar, and the staff is aware of this, and we've worked really closely with the staff to determine what is the best way to do this without sort of having unintended consequences and also easing the parish into this. So there's no surprises. And so really what we're looking at in this code is consolidating just the estate districts and the commercial districts to simplify them. The residential districts, we realize, are a little bit more complicated and may require some more specific study and a specific focus. We did categorize and just sort of group the districts to keep them more easily understood and break them apart. So you have, sort of your commercial, residential, medical, and industrial grouped in your code, so it's easier to find what you're looking for. And then we did remove the TND districts just because in reviewing the traditional neighborhood development district and the plan unit development district, it was obvious they were both trying to do the same thing and they were kind of competing with each other. And instead of having two tools that do a job sort of midway, we refined the plan unit development district regulations to be more effective and removed the traditional neighborhood development standard and district. And then finally, we did update the use standards and added content for things like snowball stands, home offices, and consolidated standards for things like mobile home parks and RV parks. These were things we saw kind of spread out and knew that this would benefit the parish, but then also in your comprehensive plan, this was one of the goals that was highlighted, like make our use standards and where things are permitted easier to understand and to navigate. Before I switch, Steve, do you have anything you want to add, or are you good?
We'll tag team.
Yeah.
You know, particularly the use standards, and use standards are dear to my heart because you try to get use standards up to date, but new uses are coming up all the time. You know, a few years ago, brew pubs, nobody quite sure what a brew pub was. You know, then we had to figure out what's a growler, and do we have to define the word growler, and do we need standards for these new uses? So the update on use standards, you know, is going back and look at some of the older ones that we always think about, snowball stands that turn into crawfish stands, that turn into daiquiri stands, and then new things that pop up that we need to anticipate. And then realizing that you can't imagine every use that's going to come up in the future, and so there's a catch-all to give the parish a toolbox to deal with new uses that people will invent, and people do invent new uses.
It's a living document, right? I think that's a good way to think about your UDC. You kind of, at this point, I think we're really trying to clean it up, make it really easy to understand what you have, and then streamline and clarify things where it makes sense, where we're sure it's in alignment with your vision, with your master plan. Where we think you may need more time, we've kind of said, let's clean it up first and then continue on with a living document long term. Okay, great. With regards to your development standards, so these are those standards that are sort of accessory, your signs and your parking. We did update your sign regulations to be content neutral. There's Supreme Court rulings. A lot of communities in this region and across the country are doing this right now. It's going to look like a major update, but the reality is it's really just changing the way you regulate your signs where you don't have to read the sign. If you have to read the sign to regulate it, it's considered a violation of free speech, right? So it's a reflection of ongoing Supreme Court cases. And what it means in reality is, instead of saying, you know, this is a political sign, because you have to read it to know it's a political sign, it's a temporary sign, right? It's designed to be just temporary. And so it's words, it's the way we describe whether it's permitted or not, that's what changes. But the intent behind your existing regulations is maintained. So just keep that in mind. Another thing with the landscaping regulations is we did spend a lot of time in the landscaping regulations, worked really closely with the staff to clarify those standards, add best practices, preserve more open space in large residential subdivisions, preserve more green space, and then eliminate provisions that weren't working the way that the staff thought they should, right, or were intended to. So there's some cleaning up and some alignment within the landscaping regulations that we think long-term are going to be really beneficial to applicants and the administration. With regards to the parking requirements, really this was to simplify the way they're calculated. There was a lot of confusion, and so the square footage and being consistent in how this is being done, this is another sort of theme throughout the code where there were sort of multiple ways to calculate things. We sort of worked with the staff to figure out what is the most consistent, reliable method, and let's stick with one and be very clear about it in the code. And then finally, for your sort of parking areas, we did include these low-impact development standards specifically related to permeable pavement, so pavement that will absorb stormwater runoff in those off-street parking areas. So some of these were just removing barriers to different types of development because your code requires things to be impermeable or non-porous or, you know, normal concrete. I have to watch my jargon, Steve. I know, right? Let's see here. And then a little bit more on low impact development. It's a little more than just like landscaping and parking. We are looking at, again, requiring this green space in subdivision proposals. So large 25 lot residential subdivision proposals, there's a requirement for a stormwater buffer. There's requirements for using native plants. There's requirements for the first flush of stormwater to be stored and filtered on site. For commercial sites, and then again encouraging that permeable pavement. All right, and then what does this really mean? I mean, I think when we summarize at this high level, hundreds and hundreds of pages of code and think about all the hours that we've spent with the staff and with the engineering and public works, kind of poring over all these different variations. It really looks to streamline their operations. Whenever there was sort of a decision point in front of the team, we always wanted to think about what would make this simpler, more effective, but not lose the benefit to the resident or the business owner that's going to live on this street. Like, how do we make sure we balance improving the processes while also improving the results of those processes? And so for the impacts to day-to-day operations, you know, subdivisions that have substandard infrastructure are going to always go to the planning commission, right? So if there's a MODAD, y'all got to see it, right? There's a shift in that thinking where previously that may not have happened. And then you'll also see more standard subdivision requests within residential districts. And what that means is we clarified the parameters of what is a minor, what is a major, and how those things are going to be processed, as well as what is a concept plan, what is a preliminary plan, and what is a final plan. We did remove the term tentative because we were advised the public gets a little confused about those terms and thinks, you know, I'm not going to come out to the meeting until the final. And so we worked to make sure the public's perception of the process was accurately reflected in the way the code is written, to make sure that you have that engagement on the front end. You should see less PUDs or plan unit development requests, because the new requirements for plan unit development requests requires a mix of residential and commercial, so you can't have a PUD if you just have residential. And you also have to demonstrate a sort of innovative planning technique that would not otherwise be permitted in the code, right? The intent behind a PUD is, you know, you want to do something sort of more creative, more innovative, and there isn't a vehicle in the current code that would allow you to do that. So you're requesting something unique, and that's what that application is meant to facilitate. And then finally, you know, in the procedures section, I think all of us will enjoy, there are very specific charts on who is responsible for what decision-making. So you can very easily look and see, okay, I need a variance for this, and you can find out in a chart very quickly who's the administrative body. That includes the planning commission and what y'all are responsible for, not just approving, but also reviewing. So both those sort of processes are acknowledged. And that's going to help, I think, significantly with applicants who are coming in and trying to work through how things in their requests are going to be processed. Did you want to mention anything else, Steve? You good?
I think you get it.
All right. And then, Ross, did you want to go over the timeline, or you want me to keep going? All right. So, right. So, ultimately, this is our draft development timeline. It's a moving target. Like President Cooper mentioned, it's a matter of when everyone feels comfortable, or for the most part, decision makers are comfortable. And so we've kind of worked to the point where, at this point, we've submitted all chapters, so that's 1 through 900, to the parish for review. We've received comments on all chapters, and we're in the process of finalizing those chapters and delivering them to the parish over the next 2 months, at which time there'll be a decision-making process that's coordinated with the administration and you all to determine what are the next steps in terms of adoption. And so we're really excited. I mean, it's been a year of work, a year and a half with the staff and engineering and Fairway. And I think, you know, Steve and President Cooper said it really well, that we have a very dynamic team of sort of detail-oriented planners, code writers, staff that's very engaged. And at this point, we're really excited to bring it to you all, present this high-level summary before you start getting very detailed sections of code for review. Yeah? All right. And if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I have a question regarding code violations and penalties. Was that addressed in the updates?
The administrative adjudication process for code violations is actually part of part 1 of your code. So we refer to it, but we're not making substantial changes to that. If you have comments, though, we can take them down and make a note. But the violation section of your code is actually in the first part, and the UDC is in part 2.
Okay, all right. for the timeline, where does the Planning and Zoning Commission fit into the timeline? Yes.
So Paul, we're gonna, as a team, meet. Probably not move there.
You're on.
So what you have in front of you in the presentation is a timeline of about where we are. We're going to meet next week as a team to develop a real strategy and a real schedule moving forward, because we're at a point now where we've getting close to a nice draft that we can start, pushing out there, and not to say, about a month or two. But in the next week or so, we're going to meet as a team and develop what the timeline looks like specifically. And I'd say by specifically, within a week or two, because things happen. So we're going to have a much more detailed timeline soon.
And us as a commission, we're going to have a chance to vote on it, is that correct?
Yeah, so the council
Is that-
has to send it to the commission for review, yes.
Okay, so it's going to come back
Yes.
to us once it goes to the council?
Yep.
Okay.
Who's
All
the
right.
code committee? Who is the code committee? It says here code committee, the draft sent to code committee and parish council for review.
Yeah, so that might just be a layover. It's going to go to public comment. So the public will have a chance to review and provide any comments as they see fit. So just like you did for the comp plan, we're at a 60-day public comment period,
Yeah.
roughly thinking the same thing for the
Well, that's-
UDC.
It says final parish comments due in September, but then in October it says draft sent to code committee and parish council for review. Would we be the code committee? Is that what it's referring to?
I think it was just a mistype,
Mistype, yeah.
but you will get it referred by the council to this commission for review, comment, and either approval or not, just like the comp plan.
Something that causes some confusion when it comes up is the word minor subdivision. And then the public freaks out and thinks that some subdivision is coming next to their house, right? So that's one of the words that I think that we can work on in the code rewrite, is the word minor subdivision.
Yeah, that's right.
abso-
I moved out the way so
Yeah.
the consultants could see and listen and take notes.
That's right, and I just validate, absolutely, we
Yeah.
recognize that, and that confusion between minor and major and tentative and final, that, we think we have unraveled that, and we want you to read it and give us some feedback, but we've tested it, and we think we've got it right now, so, thanks for the comment, though.
Good.
So last question, Ross. As far as us receiving a draft for review, I know you mentioned it's going to go to the council, and then they're going to send it back to planning and zoning commissions? Both commissions have to vote, or is this just the planning commission?
Well, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviews it and gives its comments to the council. The council adopts it because it's a law. I don't know if it's a two-step process or a one-step process. That's up to you
Yeah, we'll
all.
have to figure that out.
It'll have to go to both.
Okay. But as far as, Ross, as far as receiving a draft of the document for us to review, when would that occur?
I'm thinking early November.
Yeah.
Early
And
November.
that will be before it goes to the council or after?
I guess we'll go to the council at that time, we'll be making a public. But we're
Okay.
meeting next week as a team.
Okay,
How
okay.
this is gonna work.
I just want to make sure that we have sufficient time to review the updates.
Dude, look, one thing I don't want to happen is this, if it doesn't get passed, that's fine, but it's not gonna be based on trying to rush it through. We're gonna
Okay.
have all the time we need to make sure we get this as right as possible.
Okay, all right,
Yeah. This, yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
All right, thanks, Ross.
I'm not gonna have you review 1,000 pages in a week.
Okay, all right.
I'm throwing it out there like 60 days.
Commissioner Crawford.
But that's just, I'm just throwing it out there.
Hey, Steve or Alex, I had a couple of questions. Right here. Under the zoning regulations, on the update the use standards, I see you have a blurb in here about the mobile homes. Is that where our current MHO, manufactured housing overlay would reside or be changed?
Going to be changed.
Going to be changed?
We don't like the word mobile home, obviously.
Okay,
It's a manufactured home, or it's something else. Mobile home means nothing. I mean, we'll define it,
okay.
and it's in the definitions, but it's either a manufactured home, a modular home, a stick-built
Okay.
home.
Okay.
You know.
So you're defining those different terms?
Absolutely.
Especially modular homes? Okay.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And so that's where that's going to fall in that category, the use standards? Or is that part of the zoning or?
It's changed.
Okay.
It's not dropped into the old one.
Okay, okay. And then, under subdivision regulations, it says, require major subdivision for sites without sufficient infrastructure. What does that mean exactly?
That means if a site does not have sufficient infrastructure, and Alex used the example of a MODED, that tips it into a major subdivision category.
Oh,
with major
okay.
subdivision approval
I
versus
see.
a minor subdivision.
Okay.
And we've redefined those terms, which would be a subdivision that requires no infrastructure improvements, but it does result in a change in lot dimensions.
Okay, I understand. You're making the distinction between minor and major.
That's
Okay.
right. And minor might be approved administratively if all other requirements are met, but when you tip into major, you're into the two-step process, full blast review, 2 public hearings, the whole deal.
Okay, okay. And then you're expecting, you modified PUDs, and all PUDs must include a mix of residential and commercial?
Well, that's the intent of a PUD,
Mm-hmm.
okay? That's what a plan unit development really is all about. If someone is using a PUD just to increase density, that's not a PUD,
Right.
okay? And so
Right.
that's what we've tried to unravel
That's
here.
what we're trying to fight
That's
against.
exactly what, if you want to increase density, ask for increased density. It's another tool for that. It's not a PUD,
Okay.
okay?
One question. So it's a mix of residential and commercial uses. Is a commercial use, like if they had a community pool and a country club setting, so to speak, a community pool or building, is that considered commercial?
I think a commercial use is a wine store.
Okay. So
Or,
what we would think of as a
or-
commercial use.
Or a little
Yeah.
restaurant.
Okay.
The community club and the community pool, we're in a real gray area, whether that's a commercial use or not.
That's fine with me. I just see that as a weasel area,
Yeah.
to try and get around this thing.
We're trying to close those little
Okay,
loopholes, for
okay.
sure. I would say a community club and a community pool is not a commercial operation.
Okay. I think that should be defined
Right.
probably
I agree.
further. Okay. I think that's all I had right now. Thank you.
Lots more to come. And
Mr.
as Ross
Truxillo.
said, our intent is not to rush this through. It's long, it's an elephant. You have to eat it in little bites, okay? Don't try to read the whole 1,000 pages. And we're going to try to feed the easy sections and then build on. And once we all understand the easy sections, then we can go to the next level and the next level.
Thank you.
together. That's the only way I do it, yeah.
Paul? Truxillo,
Yes, sir.
you're up.
I'm waiting for you to call my name, Commissioner Crawford touched on PUD. I was going to ask him a question of PUD, but he asked excellent questions about it, so I got my answers on that. Another question is, will there be some more public input to this since this is a living document?
Absolutely. So that's my answer.
Okay, good.
We'll promote it as much as we can. We'll have it online, of course, like we always do. We'll have these meetings in this room. So yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Smale?
So is there public input now? I mean, not yet. So what will be the avenue?
So again, different than a comprehensive plan is the Unified Development Code. So not everybody is going to read or need to use the Unified Development Code. So, we'll put it out there for 60 days like we did similar for the comprehensive plan. And I'm using 60 days right now because that's what we did for the comprehensive plan. And the people who are interested in it, they will review it and they will comment upon it just like they did for the comprehensive plan.
So you'll put it online?
Oh, absolutely.
And have comments online?
Yeah.
From the public?
That's correct.
For 60 days, okay. Great. And then I do have some other questions. The MHO, the manufactured housing overlay, is that gonna be changed? Is that still gonna be something that we put on forever, or are we gonna make changes in that? In other words, now the overlay lasts forever.
Right now, that is retained in the code.
It's
We
retained in
didn't
the
want
code.
to change things that dramatically.
Okay.
With this code unless we felt there was a comment or a need. And at this point, we haven't had that discussion. But if we want to hear your feedback, right? So if the intent is to remove it or amend it, or if there's a specific issue with it, that's partially why we're here today.
My question has always been, and I've had trouble getting it cleared up, but my understanding is that the manufactured housing overlay actually is permanent. Even when the property sells to another property owner, that overlay stays with the property.
That's right, it's
Runs
mapped,
with the land.
right?
And so I don't particularly like that, but that's just something that I was wondering if you guys were looking at.
I think we can look at it. I mean, we have, at this point, I think we've edited with the staff, but I don't think we've had that significant of an edit as to, it's not removed.
Okay, so you,
But I think we have looked a lot at the overlays in particular, like the PUD is no longer an overlay, it's a zoning district.
okay,
So if you are zoned, if you're not asking for an overlay over your zoning district, the PUD
Gotcha.
is a zoning
Zoning
request.
district
It
on its
stays
own.
with the land, right. And
Okay.
so there has been a little bit of a unraveling, to use Steve's words, of some of the tools that y'all use for land development, because they're a little unusual in their application. And I think, you know, y'all talking about the MOA, the manufactured housing overlay is one of those that we didn't spend a whole lot of time on, but it may be something we could look at long-term, or just at minimum understand your concerns and maybe make some corrections to it to reduce
maybe to
confusion.
require some input on what the neighborhood is, how the neighborhood is developing, and to like maybe more stick-built homes, less stick-built homes, more
It almost
manufactured
sounds
home
like-
overlays. It's, you know, which way is the neighborhood? If there's some way to put that in the code, I'm not really sure.
Well-
Two approaches is infrastructure and compatibility, design compatibility. We've
And-
had other communities where we've required roof lines, driveways, skirting, and landscaping. So, and the flip of that is infrastructure, and the goal is to make it blend in with whatever the character of the neighborhood is.
And sometimes it's not even feasible because it has to be 16 feet up in the air, and you can't put a manufactured home on piers that high, right? So maybe that needs to
Yeah,
be
we don't want a
looked at.
16-foot skirt around a manufactured
Right.
home.
Exactly, so that needs to be in the code, so when they ask for that overlay, maybe that is looked at first. Like, is it even, you know, proper to put a manufactured home 16 feet up in the air, right? So where is it gonna have to be? And maybe that could be prior to it comes to us, because when it's coming to us, we gotta make all these decisions based on flood zones and stuff like that. So if that's taken care of prior to it getting to us, then our decisions will be easier on the manufactured homes.
Yeah, I think we can look at the minimum standards for rezoning to the manufactured home overlay district. And then if you're thinking about the areas that are already mapped, that may actually be a map study, which it's an important distinction to make, right? So we're working on the code, the language, but the map is something else. So we'll just, you know, I think it's important to distinguish those two things, but we'll look at the minimum standards for the request, to make the request to
Good.
MHO.
And then the rural overlay. The short-term rentals is hidden inside the rural overlay, okay, in my opinion. It's like hidden inside the rural overlay. So somebody wants to have a Airbnb. They come to us and they ask for a rural overlay, okay, where which is basically agricultural use, right? You
Yeah.
can go and raise goats on the property, but you can also have an Airbnb. To me, that makes no sense. It needs to be separated out, and we need to have a separate overlay for short-term rentals, let's say, all by itself, just like an MHO is all by itself. You would have a separate short-term rental overlay was what I think should happen. So that's just my opinion on that. So you're taking out the traditional neighborhood developments completely? Okay, that's fine with me. And then the PUDs, there's gonna be all new rules for PUDs?
Where we could retain things and where they made sense, we kept them. So we didn't scrap your PUD and just pull in a new PUD.
I'm fine with
Yeah,
scrapping the PUD, actually, but is there what about clear cutting in the PUD rules?
So there is land, there's all updated land clearing regulations, permit requirements. There's uncut natural area requirements for subdivisions and PUDs.
Thank
So
you.
we've worked really closely. Your staff is
So
amazing.
you will
with-
not be able to come in and clear cut 200 acres, correct?
Not unless they're meeting their land clearing permits. So we're talking heritage trees, tree preservation, all that's built into the land clearing permit.
And then lot sizes, will there be some kind of lot size regulation in PUDs? Lot
I
width?
think there is flexibility in that, there is. And so, but it's dependent upon, you know, when you're putting in a plan unit development, the whole idea is it's not something that's already permitted in the code. So it goes through like a subdivision concept, preliminary and final. So you're gonna see it from the very start. So there isn't lot requirements or density requirements in it for that very purpose, because it's meant to be more open.
Can you add something if it's a small lot, the purpose for that small lot? Like, is it going to be like a garden home? Is it going to be a retirement home? You know, if you're gonna have a little bitty lot, then it needs to be for a certain purpose, not to just put a little bitty house on it, right?
Part of the plan unit development is not just like exactly what you're saying. It's not just the lot size and density, it's the land use as well. So that concept plan is gonna have both. It should have both the lot, building footprints, and land use requirements. Yeah?
Okay, good. That's all that comes to mind right away. You guys have any more questions?
Chris, there's one thing about having the manufactured housing raised.
Yes, sir.
Some stick-built houses have to be raised as well,
Right.
okay? Is that a good idea? Well, somebody bought the property,
Yeah.
and if they have to raise the stick-built house 15 feet to build, then that's what it's gonna have to be. I don't want to see 15-foot,
Mobile homes?
no, stick-built homes up 15 foot either. I mean, to me, it stays just as dangerous when we get, these hurricanes come.
You don't think it's more
Rolling
likely
through.
that a
Pardon?
mobile home, I think it's more likely that a mobile home's gonna blow off a 15-foot piers than
Well,
a
it
stick-built
might be
home.
6 of one, half dozen of another,
Yeah.
too. Commissioner Barcelona.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask if you made any updates to the short-term rental code, or is it something that you plan on looking at?
We can look into it. You know, they're defined by right in zoning classifications of commercial, I believe, of NC3, if I'm not mistaken, somebody, NC3 and higher. The reason for the rural overlay is to give an opportunity to someone who has a large property, because they're not in other residential districts. So somebody who has a rural overlay, they have some acreage, they might have a beautiful piece of property that they want to have an Airbnb on. Would that be appropriate? Then a subdivision where we get the complaints such as Lakeview Drive, E. Niles, Moonraker, things like that? Absolutely, because I mean, if you have acreage, you're not bothering anybody in a subdivision where you're constantly renting out a place that might have parties and things like that. So that's the reasoning behind why it's in NC3 and in more intense in zoning, and then at the rural overlay level in residential in case it would apply. So that's the reasoning behind that concept.
All right, thank you.
We are going to have many of these policy discussions. This is a high level, letting y'all know who the consultants are, where we are in the process, what's next. So again, I love this type of discussion, but we will have those many more times another day.
Commissioner Truxillo.
And I apologize if this was already talked about, and maybe I didn't hear it. Let's go back to PUD again. The commissioners over there ring some bells in this head up here. I don't think anybody touched on green space calculation. The proper way to.
Commissioner Truxillo, again, I'll be more than happy to talk to you about it and what your thoughts are. But again, we'll have this is a high-level meeting.
May I complete my statement, please?
Give it a shot.
Okay. Is that the calculation of green space being looked at?
Yes, without a doubt.
Thank you.
Okay. One thing, too, that I've had discussions with some of the attorneys that come before us has to do with handicapped parking. We've got one before us right now that if I remember right, it's like 38 or 40 parking spaces at a dermatology unit. It's got 2 handicapped spaces. My wife was handicapped, and almost every place we went, it was very difficult to find handicapped spaces. And I've had a discussion with the attorneys. Well, that's what ADA requires. That's the minimum ADA requires, okay? We can go above ADA requirements. And honest and truly, if you got 40 parking places, you need at least 10 or 15% of those handicapped. It depends on the business there. You know, if you've got a fast food restaurant that's got 20 parking places in it and you put 1 handicapped place, I don't think that's appropriate either. But put that in your notes to look at. Commissioner Crawford.
I just had one more comment along the lines of what Philip was saying over there. Open space, green space, these types of things. I think that open space and green space should have a single use. So if it's green space, that should be its use. If it's open space, that should be its use. If it's a drainage pond, that should be its use. It shouldn't be drainage pond also used as open space or clear space. So I think a definition needs to be clarified there. Okay.
Definitely doing that. And another thing I'll point out is that the definitions seem to be included in many locations in the code with varying text. So we're going to have one section with one set of definitions that applies to the entire code. And that's the issue that we have as staff trying to apply, you know, different standards depending on how you read and interpret it. So again, cleaning up.
No, I definitely think the chapter setup is good. That's a good improvement.
All right. Anything else from the commission? I'm going to see if there's anyone from the public that would like to speak. Jimmy?
Yeah.
Come on. You know better than that. You got to get up to the mic.
I know, but yeah. With the new UDC, how is conditional use permits going to be implemented, or are they? That's something that we've been talking in the past. I know this, well, we were on planning and zoning many years ago. I was anyway, many years ago. You know, there was some zoning requirements needed to have these, you know, special, you know, little measures to take. I believe there may be some instances that they will be needed, to be honest. So I didn't know if you were considering that in the new UDC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
How are you this evening? You snuck in.
First time I've been here for this type. Maureen O'Brien, Parish Council. Sorry I was late, I was tutoring. I wanted to just mention, and you know this, people come to zoning meetings, they come to Parish Council meetings, they came to the New Directions 2040 stuff complaining, I didn't know. I think we need to do a better job informing the public when we have these meetings and opportunities to have comments. I've stated that at Parish Council meeting previously. I would like to reiterate that. I think we need to put our thinking caps on and think of various ways where we do a better job with outreach to the public. They deserve a right to communicate to us their ideas, and I don't ever want to hear, well, we didn't know. And I can't tell you how many times I heard that, in particular for New Directions 2040. So I would hope that we all work together to try to do a better job and be as transparent and inclusive as possible.
Well, you are aware that we send out
I know.
letters and so forth.
Look, it's like I said, in the old days, everybody read the newspaper. So we didn't have to worry about it back then. Now you have so much competition for your attention. So it's not that we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We are. We just need to think of some new ways to improve that. We're going to work on making our best better. That's my recommendation. I kind of wish everybody still read the newspaper, but those days are gone, so.
They don't really even get on computers
No.
so much nowadays either.
No,
so.
and so many people are on Facebook too, but again, not everyone is. So we need to be respectful of that and respectful of the community.
But in that vein of questioning, how is Ross going to let the public know that there's a 60-day of input on this subject, on this unified code?
Every way possible, and that's the thing. We need to just try to think of new ideas. What's the best way to get the information out there? Because I, for one, have heard, I don't know, way too many times.
Who's responsible for it? Is it the planning, is it Ross?
Well, the PIO office helps tremendously, but, and it's not that I'm not trying to say we're not doing what we're supposed to do. Again, my goal is for us to make our best even better, so that more people are aware and can participate if they choose to do so.
Mr. Liner, how is the public notified about the 60 days to input on the Unified Development Code?
Okay.
So we advertised in the Parish Journal, which is the Farmer Advocate. We put it on our social media pages. We put it on our website, on the calendar. We asked people to share it, like Councilman Davis, who does a great job of his Facebook page, and he's rocking and rolling with that. So we ask everybody to share it as much as possible. Apart from social media, paid advertisement in official journal, and on our website, I'm open for suggestions.
So what is your Facebook page that you
Mine?
share it on? No, not yours, but
parish.
the parish's page that this will be shared on. What is?
I don't have Facebook, I can tell you. It's on the parish's Facebook
Okay,
page.
so it's someone else's job then to.
Oh, yes, that's PIO,
Okay,
Public Information Officer.
all right. Thank you.
Commissioner Truxillo.
Yeah, communication is a two-way street. I understand that the parish does do the website and all kind of other stuff, The only next best thing we could do is get everybody's email and email them to them, But again, will they read the email? They go to media, they go to the Facebook, it's on a website, and the communication has to be looked at it both ways. But, we can ask for everybody's email, and we can send emails out, and if you don't read the email, they come to the meeting. Oh, I didn't know.
So for the comp plan, we did use paid advertisement on Facebook, and we put it on Nextdoor, which apparently a lot of people use as well.
Right.
So we utilize some other ways, but
Good.
it is what it is. People pay attention to what they want to pay attention to.
Okay. Jimmy, I'm gonna come to you, and then Terry's got her hand up.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Jimmy Davis, District 7 Councilman. I suggest in this case, since it's a very important part of our future growth, that you may consider mailers. Everybody still has a mailbox.
Okay.
It may be more expensive when people coming here and say they weren't notified.
We've got about 10 minutes left on this group. Terry, you want to speak?
Yes, please. Terry Stevens. I am a commercial architect. Couple things. The PUD plan coming up is a wonderful occurrence, because what hasn't been brought up was the yield plan, which is what I wrote on the card to our consultant here. That's the thing that's really killing and really causing the suffering in the PUD plan. TND, I'm sad that that's going away, because and I forgot what it's called, but there's a really nice subdivision that's out to the west. And TNDs, by their nature, have commercial and residential, and those are kind of nice because they're like a city within a city, so people don't have to go across town because they've got a little commercial component and they've got a little residential component. So I don't think those really should be thrown out the window. Maybe the PUD needs a little bit more exercising, but not the TND. I don't think by nature it's a problem. That yield plan is a problem. So what you might want to think about when you're talking about PUDs and minimum lot sizes is, and I sort of touched on this in the last meeting, when you've got a PUD and they're asking for A2 or A3 or A4, there's a minimum lot frontage that's required in those particular entities. So if they're asking in their PUD for an A2, there's a minimum frontage. So you can say, you give me that minimum frontage and you can have your PUD. Let's talk about enforcement. That was a really great one too, because it's not your job to enforce, but you can't rely on the parish or somebody to bust them and send them to the justice of the peace or the court. There has to be a way for, and this has happened here, where developers have they've over-cleared, they've busted through what you had approved in a limited sense, which negates everything you're trying to do here. So there has to be a way that you can, or the code can, automatically impose sanctions. If you've violated XYZ, then you can't do the next two steps, or something to that level. The last thing I'll talk about is the manufactured housing. That really does need to be split up better, because there are mobile homes that have wheels. They're rolled in, you know what they look like. They're 10 feet wide by 50 feet long. You know what they look like. They become mobile home parks. Those are different than modular homes, and those are different than pre-manufactured homes. But pre-manufactured homes and modular homes are not necessarily stick-built. So you really do need to take that and break it down a little bit more, a little bit greater, because there will be some people that don't like mobile homes, but modular homes are okay, or pre-manufactured. They literally make houses now in warehouses, in pieces, and they deliver them to a site, but they're not stick-built. Some of them are, but some of them are not. Some of them they make 3D homes now. So where does that fall? So there really does need to be a little bit more specificity as far as mobile homes, because it's really been a problem of late. The last thing I'm going to suggest is that when this gets further along, and it seems like it's really dragging and no one really knows what they're looking at, I would hate to think that they would plunk down their finished product before you've had a chance to look at it. And there's a lot of really knowledgeable people in the public now who come to these meetings routinely and bring up really good information, because they're learning an awful lot. And they're learning the hard way, because things have happened that they really don't like. So I think that before they finish their job, maybe something needs to be circulated and floated so that all of your input, like tonight, can be put online, so that when someone goes to the site to look at what the comments are, they'll see that you've already talked about green space, and you've already talked about green space not being a pond, green space really being usable green space, so that the questions aren't they're not duplicating one another, but you'll see, oh, someone's already asked this question. You guys hear it before any of the council hears it. They're the last resort, but they're the ones that have to adopt it. So going there first is probably a bad idea. I think it really should come here first for your input and the public's input, and everybody be able to see what everybody else has said.
There was another gentleman that wished to speak, so I'm going to stop you there, Terry. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Yes, sir. My name is Jack Vincent, and I live on Soul Drive in the Avita Springs area. I'd like to echo the comments of the council members regarding notification. In my subdivision area, I'm a youngster. We've got people in there 80 and 90 years old who have about 10 years in the parish now. I just found out about the Farmer being the official newspaper. I don't know what the circulation is, but it can't be that great. So there's got to be a way to get information out. Now, fortunately, my neighborhood is organizing, and we have 300 members on a Facebook group where we keep in touch. I'm retired, so I go around the neighborhood and talk to people and keep them informed as to what's going on. So it's kind of a grassroots effort, but we do need, I think, to find another way to get information out and to get information in. I don't know what the answer is, but again, mail seems quite simple. Everybody's got a mailbox. Mr. Doherty, I want to comment on handicapped spaces. I'm a disabled veteran. I've been avoiding getting the handicap license plate with a little wheelchair on it. It aggravates the spots out of me when I see perfectly healthy people jumping out of a car with a handicap license plate. The car's license for someone in the family who is handicapped, but we've got a perfectly healthy person taking up a parking spot. So we got an enforcement issue on that too. But I agree with you. We have a need for that. Our community is aging. Baby boomers are at the peak now where we're having trouble walking and so forth. And maybe we need to look at what the requirement should be for practicality versus what the requirement is. Thank you.
Okay.
Members of the commission, I'm Mike Soche. I'm here on behalf of the chamber. I'm co-chair of the Public Policy and Governmental Affairs Committee. Ross knows that since 2016-17, we had some engineers, architects, other stakeholders, Home Builders Association, the chamber, and others who want the code rewrite committee. We provided a lot of information to his office, which I know some of that has been input into this process. My only question is, are you going to reach out to that committee or members of that committee formally to get this information to them so we can take another look? I just want to make sure that that happens.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
There was a lady, I believe, that wanted to speak. We got just a couple of 3 minutes.
It's a yes/no question. So my name is Elizabeth Sanji, and so I know that, so we're not remapping or rezoning with this, correct? So with zonings being consolidated and others being removed, is there going to be direction in this ordinance to describe how to handle those situations?
There will be a training component once the new code is adopted, and the short answer is yes. And then the first answer is no. There's no mapping at this point. Mapping will be later on.
Right. So these like the estate zonings that are combined, there'll be something in there addressing when they're not combined on the zoning map, but how to actually handle the new code.
So Lizzie, there's maybe 4 state districts. I think only one of them actually use that. So it's like we had these 49 districts and some of them aren't used.
Right, and then you had commercial ones and
Going 5
so.
miles an hour before we go 100.
No, I understand. I was just, I know we're not getting remaps. I'm trying to figure out the gray spot. Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Come forward and state your name, please. We're gonna get about a minute.
I'll be short. My name is Pat Phillips. I live at 1314 Woodmere Drive. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm the chairman of the Sub-Drainage District 2 of Drainage District 5, St. Tammany Parish. So I missed the beginning of the presentation. I apologize for that. But using that subdivision as an example, I'd like to know how all this fits into how a sanctioned subdivision like ourselves inside St. Tammany Parish, because it made a comment on their substandard subdivisions. I didn't quite follow all that about what was a substandard subdivision or drainage district and how that would affect, like, example would be Meadowbrook. I'd just like to hear how that would work out.
Okay, thank you.
And I apologize, I have hearing aids, so it's hard to hear in the back.
Okay, all right. I thank y'all for coming.
Well, I'd like to hear the answer to that if I could.
All right, let me,
I mean, these new regulations are going to be applied prospectively. So in most cases where you have a subdivision that's already built out and already has infrastructure in place, these new provisions are not going to apply to those old subdivisions unless they are adding new land and have to come before the commissions for some kind of change to what's currently there. But like most laws, they almost always apply prospectively and never retroactively.
I got to add one thing. It is the classic confusion with the word subdivision. A subdivision, as this gentleman is referring to, could be like Happy Acre subdivision. What we're talking about is a subdivision of property that was just talked about, and when people divide property, subdivide it into new lots, they need to meet new infrastructure standards. So that's what we refer to as a subdivision that has improvements versus a subdivision that doesn't have improvement, not Happy Acres or whatever your subdivision is called.
you might want to throw minor subdivisions in on that too.
Oh, they're in there, don't worry.
Okay. All right, thank y'all for coming, and we're going to adjourn this meeting, and we will start with the Planning Commission meeting here in just a minute. Thank you.
I know.